All right, so we're going to talk about managed metadata and some of the options around it. Then we're going to talk about managed metadata in libraries. Then we're going to really delve into creating some fun stuff. We're going to create a product catalog. Now, I created the product catalog that you're going to see in the videos all on Office 365. There's some really easier ways to do it, and I'll talk about those when I do it, but I wanted to do it the hard way so that you could see it could be done, even if you don't have all of that. And then we're going to talk about some really cool search things, and I'm going to show you some things that I did with search with regard to managed metadata and kind of creating a catalog-like atmosphere as well. All right, so we'll talk about managed metadata first, and we'll talk about term store administration. So this is really delving into administering these pieces. You can manage term set groups and term sets. There's things called synonyms and languages. So if you're working with, anybody work with multiple languages in your environment? Okay, so working with multiple languages, this is very important for you. You can go in and create those alternate language labels and things for that. There's really cool stuff that you can do. Everybody's heard the term folksonomy and taxonomy, right? Mm-hmm. So taxonomy is more formal, what we actually call things, the labels that we want associated with them. Folksonomy is less formal, maybe what the common language is. Managed metadata allows us to work with both of these, and we do that when we manage the term sets and the language, especially with things like synonyms and labels, right? So we can go in and create a label for something. Remember I was talking about this two-state abbreviation? We could go in and create the label that is also the full-on state name, or even the three-letter abbreviation that we used to use like 30 some odd years ago, way long time ago. So we could put those in as labels so that if people searched by those, it would know that, oh, I'm also looking for this, and it would find the appropriate data for you. So that's how we can do that. Some of the things that I've seen, especially like when you're talking about departments, everybody has your department name and the official name, and we want that to be the official term that we use. Well, then we can go in and create synonyms and labels that are also the slang term. You know, we have the information technology group, and we just call it ITG. These things are in my way. So I talk with my hands a lot. So I'm going to stand them up a little bit further so maybe I don't hit them so bad. Can you still hear me? Everybody can still hear me? Good. Like I'm going to hit that thing and it's going to go flying. So we call it information technology group, but in the language, when we're in that department, we just call it ITG, right? Or IT. Or maybe we call it infotech, you know. So we can create these additional labels so that if people use those terms or search for it by those terms, because if I'm in ITG and I'm searching for something and hey, I know this is one of our documents and I put that in, it's going to search using the actual official word for me, right? So that's very, very important to do. Yes?
If you have the actual official word and it changes, because other parts change all the time, can you then put the actual official word as a synonym and change the
yes,
and word? Does it update everything?
Yes. Yes. So there's a couple of things that you can get there, and that we'll get to that. There's things called deprecating and retiring, and you can deprecate a term and what the new term is, and it will help you with all of that. So there's some settings that happen at the group level. So when you create a term group, like your company, and you saw in the first session I created the company Contoso group, and then underneath that I created the terms underneath it. Term set was department, and then the terms were HR, IT, finance, maintenance. So at the group level, you can create some very specific terms and settings. The name of the group, obviously that makes sense, right? Who's going to manage it? This is where you can set up, it's basically your permissions on who can do what with it. And contributors, if you want specific people to be able to add terms to that beyond just managing the term set itself, which means managing the deprecation and things like that, then you can put in contributors and who's going to do that. Then you go to the term set. So that was at the Contoso level. The term set that we created was departments. So then we have some other information we can have here. And a lot of this is what you select will change. If you select that it's available for navigation, then you're going to get additional tabs at the top. And I think the next screen actually shows you some of the tabs on the term that appear. So things like your title, who owns it, a point of contact. You know, hey, we have a problem with your term set. We need to email you about it because it doesn't contain the word that we need and you've turned off the ability for us to contribute to it. Who do we contact about that? So your end users need to be able to just click and say, yes, contact somebody about this, and then it will email the appropriate person or group. Whether it can be submitted to, submission status. So yes, we're going to allow users to add terms to it. That's, you go in and you have a choice column that says what color, red, white, blue, green, yellow, gold. Maybe it doesn't list the color and we know it's a different color. We have the ability to add that color. But if you've turned that off, so there's no submission, then we can't add colors to that. That's when especially that port of contact becomes important, because then we need you to go add it so we can select it. Stakeholders, people that are interested in these terms, people that need to know when things change. That's pretty important. If HR is managing it and HR managers are not in charge of it, but maybe some subgroup is, and those managers need to know when those term sets are being messed with or changed, so that when updates are made, they get a notification as well. How are we going to use it? Will it be used for navigation? Very important. We're going to talk a lot about navigation in this session. Faceted navigation, that's like for refining terms and things on the side. Or is it going to be used for site navigation across the top or across the left-hand side? Global or local navigation can be done with that. Are we going to allow it to be used as tags? So anybody use tags, hashtags, clouds, things like that? We know what that's kind of that folksonomy thing. So we can still manage it even though it's kind of a folksonomy. So will we allow people to use it as tags or not? Bad words, not. I always say, no, create that list. How are we going to sort them? By default, it's going to sort alphabetically for you. But you can change that up. You can say, no, don't sort it alphabetically, so that when they're looking, we want the most common ones at the top. You can custom sort, all of that stuff. And then you can create custom properties. This is kind of cool. So the properties that would be associated with it, it's part of the help for specific query rules. Anybody work with query rules with search? So when you work with query rules, these custom properties becomes very, very important with your managed metadata. All right, so in your term settings, you can see over here on the right, you get these tabs, and you can go through each tab and work with it. Now, navigation, if you've turned off at the term set, the ability for it to be part of navigation, you won't get those. So it will just disappear from your view. You only get those if it's available for navigation. All right, so general settings, this is where you want to check that box or uncheck that box for available for tagging. There are some things that I do recommend you go ahead and create a word list that says, no, we can't use these words to tag things with because it's not appropriate. What language, if it's English language or not English language, this is where your language settings come into play. You can create multiple terms showing what language it is. A description, default labels. Your term itself is usually the default. Then anything underneath that would be additional labels. If they typed ACC for accessories, then we could consider that a default label, right? Or not the default label, but an additional label. It's like your synonyms and things like that. And then the navigation settings. So when you go into navigation settings, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can customize the display in the navigation area, which is kind of cool. So you can change how it's going to look. Rather than using maybe the term set name, you can customize that and say we want it to show this label versus the other label. So it's just changing the way it looks in navigation. If you've typed it in with no spaces, you can go and add spaces, things like that. If you're using term-driven images and pages, which you will sometimes when you go into really heavy catalog creation, then you can create the URL for those and what it's going to look like. If we're going to use a specific term set as part of the URL. And then, of course, you can go in and show your refiners when you start working with faceted navigation. So that's when you're using, you're drilling further into data using that faceted navigation. And then, of course, you've got some custom properties. Again, that's part of your query settings. So when you're working with the term store itself, terms can be reused. They can be pinned. So you could actually create the same term in multiple places. That's reuse. They can be pinned. They can be merged, deprecated, or deleted and moved. Right? So we can move them around, which is very important, especially when we're starting out. Were you in the first session?
Yes.
Okay. You weren't sitting right there, were you?
No, I changed.
I was like, you're not the same person. Like, wait a minute. Don't mess with me. So we talked earlier about, moving things around. And when we create the first initial set of terms, it may not be extensive enough. We may need to promote things up. So this makes it easy for us to do that. We can move sets into groups and things like that. So we can move those things around. Pinning means that when you pin an item or a term to another term set, then it still is managed in that original location, but they can be used in other term sets. Really important for things like if you're doing production, and you'll see I think I have a demo of that. Can't remember. I think it's in the demo. There's a group called production management, and maybe they manage some of the products and how they produce those versus the people that actually list and approve the products. And so it originally needs to be created where the people manage and approve those products, but we need to use it in product management as well. So we pin it there. They can't manage it, they can't change it, they can't add additional labels or do anything like that, but then they have the ability to work with those terms in their sites. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Reused items can be placed in another location, and they can be modified from anywhere, right? So if I just said reuse and reused them down there, then they could go make changes to it as well. So then you have two sets of properties, maybe conflicting sets of properties. I prefer pinning to reuse personally, because pinning allows you a finer set of control. Okay. So when we talk about managed metadata navigation, there's 3 places that it happens. At the site collection level, and you need to turn on publishing for that. So you have to turn on publishing to change your navigation. So it has to be, you can start with a team site and then just go in and turn on the features for publishing. Then at the site level, you go in and you manage your navigation settings there. And you still get the ability to say, is it global navigation, which is across your top, or is it local navigation, which is your left-hand side, right? Then you also have list and library navigation. There's a couple of things there. You can have a hierarchy, so you can manage by hierarchy. Those people that are used to, does anybody here use a lot of folders? Remember the first session we had that thing with all the folders? Folders in your libraries and, document shares. Anybody use document shares? And they drill down and your users just want those document shares. I want to drill down through my list of folders. You can create them a metadata hierarchy that's just like drilling down through their list of folders to get to what they want. Okay, so you have that. Then you also have a key filter, which allows you to use multiple terms to find what you want. Okay, and we'll show you that. I actually do have a demo of that as well. It's not this one, but it's the next one. So this demo is going to be term store management. Give me just a second here. Pull this up. Where is my term store management? All right, somewhere over there is there we go. Part 2. Here we go. Maybe. You're going to play? Why is it not playing? Oh, please work. There we go. So I'm using Office 365 for this one. You can do an Office 365. You can do this in on-prem. You can do this in 2010. But in Office 365, there's 2 places you can do it. You can come in, I don't know why I'm hovering over records management. I clicked the wrong thing. But you can come in to your term store here from your Office 365 Admin Center. Or if you're on-prem, you can go into Central Admin and get to it. Or you can actually even go into your site or site collection, and I do show you how to do this. So I'm just kind of showing you some of the different terms and things and how I've organized it. This is my yoga demo. Remember we talked about that with the different terms there. My products, I have a product color, product size, product types. I have clothing. Under clothing, I actually have multiple things. I have shorts, I have shirts, I have different things. So products is what we're going to use to actually create a product catalog, and then I do a different one with the search for the yoga stuff. But in my product types, you can see I've got who the owner is it closed or open for submission. I don't want people adding to it, just randomly creating product types for me. Right? So we need to manage that centrally. But maybe for color, I think I turned on the ability to have people submit color so they can change the colors up. And then, of course, I have turned on tagging, so you can tag with these things, using it for navigation. I'm using the default sort order, which means it's going to be alphabetical, ABC. Term-driven pages. When you get into, I just did a very basic product catalog, but if you want to get really extensive with publishing, you can go in there and do your term set navigation URLs. So in the term itself, you can come in here and change things around. Navigation node title is going to be there. You can change it. Remember I said you could change that. So if you typed one word and maybe you wanted it to be expanded on the description in the navigation itself, you can change that. It's just changing the way it appears, not changing the actual term set label. So here's the other way you can get into it. You can come into your site settings, and then under site administration, you'll see term store management, and you can click that. I think I clicked it. Nope, just showing you. And so then what I've done is I've come in here. You can see I've got my bad words. I have that unavailable for tagging. Guess what the bad word is? Anybody want to guess? Yeah, very good. So here I've come in. I've got sports. I've got yoga. Yoga is my actual term under my division. And you can see we can do all of these different things. We can create, copy, reuse, pin, do those things. So I actually come in, and I think under, did I do it under divisions? I can't remember where I did it. Somewhere in here I create a new term set. Oh, see, there's my bad words. And you can see I don't tag. And now when I save it, don't forget to save. But it will warn you if you try to leave the page, like if you've made some changes and you try to leave the page, it says, hey, you've got changes. What do you want to do? So now under division, I've created a term. I'm going to create a term called product management, right? And this is going to be, if I can type, or production management. And this is going to be actually the people that produce the clothing, right? So they need to work with the clothing terms as well. So I'm going to come in here. To my clothing. Come on. Nope. Wrong place. Pinning the term with children. Faster. And I'm going to come under product and product types. And you see I chose pin the product or pin it with the children because I want that whole set coming. I could do just the individual terms if I wanted, each one individually. But I just pinned there. But now if you see it up here, you can tell it's got that little hook thing on it, but I can't change anything.
So you go to where you want it to be pinned rather than going to the original and
Yes.
saying pin it elsewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you got to go to where you want it and then go find it.
Yeah.
So, but now I can come back in here to clothing. I can still manage it here. So the people that actually manage the products that we offer will be managing those terms versus the people that are producing it. They're just using it for maybe their process labels or things like that. Make sense? Okay. There we go. And we're back. So now, libraries is where we use managed metadata a lot. Lists and libraries, right? We want to have that column that's got the information in it. Anytime I go into a place and I see that they've got document libraries and they have folders buried like 8 or 10 deep, why are we doing this, people? I don't understand. The first thing I say is, why don't you have managed metadata? And they've set up the service. 9 times out of 10, they set up the service because they set it up with implementation and nobody ever did anything with it. Nobody created any term sets. Nobody did anything with it. It's just sitting there. I'm like, this is what this is for, people. This is why we have it. So let's create some managed metadata columns, and let's work with these in our lists and libraries. So we go in, we start creating term sets, we go into our lists and libraries and start adding those columns in and putting that data in, and they go, wow, we can find things easier, we can get to what we want easier. Makes a lot of sense. It just works. So it allows your users to apply managed metadata to your content. So you've got an official term store and term set. It's the actual terms you want to use, and they get to use it in whatever content they want. Your end users can create those content types, your power users, right? And they can reuse that data for you, making it much easier for them to say, oh, we've already got this list. I don't have to generate it again. One person creates it, manages it, and then anybody else can be reusing that. You can connect to existing term sets, or when you create a column, you can actually create a new term set. Say, oh, we want a new term set right now. And you can start creating that as you work with it. The cool thing is, in 2013, Quick Edit. You can now use Quick Edit. In 2010, when you had a managed metadata column and you wanted to go to that data view so that you could enter bulk items and do a bunch at once, you couldn't do it, right? It was a pain in the butt. Because it would never look up that data. Now we can use the Quick Edit and actually look up that data and copy data down. When I built the product catalog for this, I used it. I used the term set, and I went in and I would say, oh, clothing, and then I would just copy it and drag it all the way down. It's just like Excel. You catch the corner of it and pull it down. Selects it all. Makes it really nice and easy when you're doing bulk edit and bulk entry. And use the submission policy to allow users to enter their own terms where it's appropriate. That's a big thing, where it's appropriate. You don't want them necessarily creating a new product type, but if it's the color of the product and they want to add new colors, let them add new colors, right? Let your users contribute to the data too. It's really important to do that, especially maybe when you're starting a new term set. You don't know what terms need to be in it. Create it, let them add the terms. Once you see what all the terms are, then you can go in and manage that and turn off the submission later. And then you can manage those terms themselves. Really get your users involved in creating those term sets, especially if you're not sure what they're going to need. It's a brand new implementation. Create the basic term set, let them start using it, and then go in and work with that data. Turning on navigation in your libraries. Pretty easy. You go into the library settings, manage metadata navigation settings. You can set whether or not to use the hierarchy or the key filters or both. And I use both in this one. You can set the indexing. This is very important, especially if you're using large lists. Anybody got a list with more than 5,000 items in it? Mm-hmm. We all do, right? And we don't think it's going to be that way when we start. So we don't start with indexing. Start with indexing. Just any list or library, go ahead and create yourself some index columns. I always recommend that you go ahead when you start using managed metadata navigation to do this as well. Turn on that indexing so that it can start creating that, because you have a limit in the number of index columns that you can create, or combinations of index columns that you can create. So go ahead and create that before you start getting a lot of data in there, because once you get 5,000 items in there, turn on indexing and it's going to go, I don't know what you want. Right, so you need to do it before the problem exists. All right, so this is a pretty cool, this is a quick demo here of how you can use this once you've turned on filtering for managed metadata in libraries. I always lose my mouse on these. Make it big. All right, so here's my library of yoga poses. I don't know what happened there, sorry. And you can see on this left-hand side, I've turned on managed metadata, but I'm going to show you how I did it. So come in here. It's pretty easy. Right down here, managed metadata navigation settings. And I've selected all of mine as hierarchy as well as key filters. And I'll show you the difference. Hierarchy, you can select one thing. One. You're drilling down to that one specific folder or file that you want, right? Hierarchy is that. It's that folder feeling that your users love because they love data shares, right? The key filter is a little bit different. You can use multiples, and you'll see how I do that. So now you can see I'm going to drill down. I can say, okay, I'm looking for the anatomical focus. I want to do lower abs, and I can click on that, and it's going to take me into that folder of things that have that hierarchy applied to it. All right, so you can go in and do that. I can do it by yoga type. So I can say, oh, I want all the aerial yoga. This is what I do, is aerial yoga. So you can see all of the aerial yoga poses that are available. So you can drill down specifically. Again, this is based off of a use case that people are actually doing this and creating their entire yoga classes using this kind of stuff. But now you can come down here, I'm in aerial, and I can say, oh, I want multiple anatomical focuses, and I want to filter it down to just those items that I want. So your users then have the ability to drill down and then filter at the same time. So, and they can do multiples here. They could select different categories, things like that as well. So that's how we can use manage metadata navigation in libraries. And that's pretty simple, right? That's just doing one or two quick things, turning it on. You're not affecting publishing. You don't have any of that other stuff turned on. You don't have to have publishing to do this in lists and libraries. It can be in any site that you want. You just go into the library or list settings and turn on the navigation there. Okay, pretty easy. And you can do a lot of very rich things with it. Let me flip back to here. Now we can do this. We can do some really, really cool things. We can create product catalogs and work with our data and offer it as a catalog. Anybody ever shop at, like, Best Buy or anything online? That's a catalog. We can create things like that. All right, so it's enabled through cross-site publishing. It is available in a template form. I do not demo the template form, okay? Because I want you to see how you create it from start to finish. In Office 365, you don't have that template. Anybody using Office 365? Anybody? A couple of? So you can do this in Office 365. The one thing you don't get in Office 365 is public-facing. So it can't be public-facing catalog. If you were doing this on-prem and you had a public-facing area using cross-site publishing, you could actually publish this out to public-facing. But internally, maybe you need to offer a product catalog of things like yoga poses or what office supplies you need, right? We all need office supplies and things like that. What computers we offer to our users, pick one, they can order and do things like that. So you can still do this type of thing for an internal purpose, okay? So in Office 365, that's your big limitation. On-prem, you can go all the way out. And it allows users in one site to create the content and in a different site to consume that content in a different way. And it looks different as well. So I'm going to do a quick demo showing you what the product catalog looks like, and then I'm going to take you through how I built that. Does that work for you guys? Okay. Product catalog. All right, so I don't have a lot on here. It's a publishing site. We had to turn on publishing. But this could be like your welcome page, whatever you want it to be. You can see we have the catalog type things across the top. It's going to take us through, show us what they are. We can filter through. This is my bikes and my clothing and all of those. Remember, we had products in our managed metadata. So you can see all of these things. It's got a picture. We can click on them, see what the actual more data is, stuff like that. You can see that the clothing has drop-down arrows, so I could do the top level of clothing or those underneath. I had to create that just so you'd see it. That's why clothing is the only one with multiple layers, because it was easy to divide out. Those other things, I don't bike, so I was like, I don't know what categories to put in this. Not for me. So, but then, our components, do we want wheels? Do we want frames, forks? I do know what the parts are. I just don't know how to determine if it's a mountain bike versus a road bike. That comes from this other site where we actually have created our products. And we did this by creating content types called products. And we created a content type. It's got, I think I actually take you through it. So I come in here and created a content type called product with image. All right. And it's got a title, an item number, a roll-up image, a product type, color, size, price. We need that, right? The reason we need this roll-up image, and that's also we have to have publishing turned on so that we can have that image that shows for our users. It works with content or image renditions. Anybody do branding and design in here? Nobody do branding and design? If you're interested in that, go to Kathy Dew's session. She's going to, this is very basic. She'll show you how to make this look really pretty and phenomenal, right? Because a lot of it works with that same kind of stuff. So we've come in, we've created a document library. We're using the product with image, and we add in our products themselves. And then you come in here, and there's this thing called catalog settings. Once you've got your data in there, you can come into your catalog settings and say, enable this library as a catalog. What that does is tell search, hey, we're going to use this as a catalog. Set me up the right display stuff. And it will do the basics for you, okay? So once you do that, and you've turned on this as a catalog, you'd go over to this site, or there's one of the items. You go back to the other side and say, hey, we want to consume this catalog. And then you set it up from there. I don't know if I told you, if I do, yeah, I do. Okay. And there's your roll up with your image. I don't know if I clicked it or not. I don't think I did. Okay. All right. So I'll show you how we built that. It's pretty cool, but it was really not as hard to build as I thought it was going to be, especially considering they have a template for it, and I was trying not to use the template. That was fun, by the way, breaking that down, figuring out how to do that. So the first thing you have to do is create your product management site collection. So you have to have that back-end site where you actually enter all the product details. It can be a team site, whatever you need it to be, but you have to turn on some site collection features that are important. You have to turn on the ability for cross-site collection publishing, and you have to turn on SharePoint server publishing infrastructure. That gives you that images library that does image renditions for you, which gives you the ability to have the original image, a thumbnail image. It creates all of those renditions for you, so you don't have to create all of those yourself. Then you have some site features that you have to turn on. You need to turn on metadata navigation and filtering. You need to deactivate the minimal download strategy because of the publishing feature. That's why you have to turn that off, okay? And then turn on SharePoint server publishing itself, so you get pages and things like that. You won't work with them in this particular library, but you need to have that turned on so that the features are published over. Next, you get to set up your managed metadata hierarchy. So go ahead and create your term sets, your groups, things like that. I created some very basic ones, right? You saw product type, you saw color, you saw a couple of those things that were in there, size for clothing, right? So that we knew what size it was. Yes?
Does this have to be in the global term sets, or can
it can be local.
In the local collection?
It can be in the site collection. I did mine global because it was just easier, but you can do it in either location. But you want to use term sets, a new term set for each column, right? And those columns are what's going to give you those filters across the top, right? Where you can go through and see that. And it also gives you the faceted navigation. Now, I did turn on faceted navigation in mine because I wasn't doing a lot of search with that one. It was a very basic one. But what you can do is once you navigate to clothing, you can turn on faceted navigation and do the size. So you can filter down and only see the things that have the sizes you want. Okay, so that's part of your faceted navigation. And then, of course, making those term sets, you do have to mark them as available for navigation, obviously, or you can't use them within that. Creating your content types. We use the parent content type of item. It's pretty easy. Use content type of item. I created a product underneath that and then a product with image. I just added a couple of columns each time. I didn't necessarily have to. I could have gone straight to product with image, but I wanted the ability to have regular products without images if I wanted to. So I created both. And then you make sure you add those metadata columns as part of your content type, right? So when you create your content type, go in and add those metadata columns. Now, I only made one of those required, and that was the product type, because we have to have a product type to be able to do the catalog, right, across the top. What type of product are we looking for? I did not make the other columns required because not everything is going to have a small, medium, large for a size or a color or things like that. So some things had color, some things didn't, some things had sizes, some things didn't. So I did not make those required, but I want them in there so that they're available if we need them for the faceted navigation. All right, so make sure that when you're going in and planning that, you're planning that part out. Bicycles, there was no small, medium, large, right? But they had colors. But certain things did and certain things didn't, okay? Use the roll-up image column. It's an already existing column. That's why when we turn on those publishing features, it's important. It already exists for you. You don't have to go build that, because building that is not fun. But basically, it gives you the ability to go in and say, I want to use this image, and I want this rendition of the image. Give me the thumbnail versus the full-size image. Otherwise, you'd have really big pictures, right? Not a great catalog, but once you delve in, you want that big image, right? So you have the ability to do that. Then you go into your product list, and you create your products. Make sure you set the content type to be your product with image or whatever you're using. Turn on the content approval and versioning. Funny story. I don't see them in here, so that's a good thing. Vesa Juvonen is here, and Neil Hodgkinson are here. They both work for Microsoft. Great guys. They do a lot of stuff with Office 365 and search. So I built out this product catalog, this beautiful thing that you saw. And I had all my content in there, and nothing was showing in my catalog site. And I was like, what is going on? And I waited a couple of days because I know I'm doing it in Office 365. It's like, maybe the search hasn't finished indexing. I know it's supposed to start every 15 minutes. I flagged it like 2 or 3 times. Hey, reindex, reindex, reindex me. Nothing's happening. It's like, what in the world is going on? So I'm emailing people, hey, search is search broken for my Office 365 site? What's going on? And they get me to Neil and Vesa. And I was like, hey, dude, if I'd known I'd been talking to you guys, I'd have emailed you first because I know them. And as I'm typing an email to them, telling them what's going on, I realize I have just flipped my view to one that showed the content approval. And it was all pending. Whereas my default view didn't show the content approval status. And I went, I think I may have figured this out. Let me get back to you. Went in and approved everything. There it all was. So remember, if you turn on content approval, doesn't matter how much you search, it's not going to show up. I was just like, oh. And they were like, we won't tell anybody. It's like, no, I'm going to tell people that because they'll remember my mistake and maybe they won't make it. Yes, it's the little things. I had done everything. You know, here I am, IT pro. I'm looking for the big things. I think it's got to be something on the back end. Nope, just forgot to approve all my items. So there you go.
Would that be true with draft items and major items?
Yes. Yes, so unless it's actually been approved.
As well,
Yeah, because it doesn't need to be in the catalog until it's approved. And it's all based on search. So, yay, right? Anyway, so then you go in, once you've turned all that stuff on your library, then you go in and add all your products. I did mine from a spreadsheet, made it really easy, blah, 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 dropped it all in, set my images, let it go. And then you go in, I showed you in the list where there's this catalog setting. You click the catalog setting and turn it on. When you do that and you turn on the catalog setting, it's going to send something out and notify all the other sites that, hey, I'm publishing a catalog. Do you want to use me as a catalog? I'm publishing myself as a catalog. It lets them know. The other thing it does is it's going to tell you, not in Office 365, because I don't know if y'all read all that data at the top when I went into that page, but in on-prem is it's going to tell you the last time that it was indexed and all of that stuff. So it's going to tell you your search history because it's all based on search. If it's not fresh, you can go into that catalog settings page and click reindex, and it'll take it through and make it reindex as a full crawl on the next time that anything crawls it. It'll say, oh, I want to do the whole thing anyway, right? So you can request that. You can also do that in Office 365. It's just not going to tell you all your search history settings at the top. It just says this information is not available because you're sharing your tenant with 10,000 other people. All right? So when you go into your catalog, so here it is. So this information at the top where it says search information, in Office 365, it's going to give you this. The content has been crawled in the or content source that this belongs to has been crawled in the last 24 hours. That's all you get. Like if you're on-prem, it gives you more detail. It'll tell you all that stuff. And then you get your taxonomy timer information. How often does it update and let it know? Reindex this list. That's the piece that you can say, hey, it's not showing my new items. Let's go ahead and reindex, and you can tell it to do that. Catalog sharing, enable this library as a catalog. And then this anonymous access one is kind of important if you're doing public facing. If you're not doing public facing, it's not quite so important. But public facing is very, very important because you want anonymous people to be able to view that content. Now, it doesn't give it anonymous access to your entire site. Those of you that deal with security might freak out a little bit when you say, oh, we're enabling anonymous access, but it's on an internal site. No, we're only enabling it as a catalog for anonymous access. So only that data is going to be available. All right. And then we can tell it what we can build our URL. How are we going to make our URL shaped? Sorry, I keep walking out of his camera. He's getting mad at me. How are we going to shape our URL? What's the URL for our product going to actually look like? So we can shape that there. And then what is the column that's going to give us the right categories for that global navigation? That's the important piece. That's why if you're going to use that, whatever column you want to use for your navigation, that's the one that has to be required. It has to be a required field because every item in your catalog needs to have that data in it. Like we talked about earlier, where I only made the type the required field. If I had not made the type the required field and they didn't put in a type, it wouldn't have shown up anywhere. So we have to make sure that that's a required field for our content type. Then we get to create the catalogs for your site collection that's going to consume it, right? Or the site collection that will consume your catalog. So there's two site collections. One that's going to create all the data, one that's going to display it all for your people, whether it's internal or external. Now I use Office 365. It's all internal. It would be like if I was just selling it to other people within my company, right? Or maybe I have just distributors and they need to order the stuff so that they can deliver it, right? It wouldn't be something that's public facing for Office 365 because you can't do that. It has to be a publishing site collection, so create it as a publishing site collection. And then in the site settings, there's this thing called Manage Catalog Collections. Remember when I told you that you turn it on for catalog, it broadcasts and says, hey, I'm a catalog, pick me, pick me, pick me, so that when they go in, you can select that. You can select multiple catalogs in a single publishing site collection. So you could actually have a product catalog, you could have an exercise catalog, you could have all different kinds of catalogs and roll it all up into one place.
Excuse me, can I just interject? When catalog with these site settings, is this 2013 or 2010?
This is 2013 in Office 365, yes. The thing that I'll show you next, you can do in 2010 with the search. So you can connect to a catalog. You may have multiples listed. You can select multiples there. When you connect to it, you get a settings page. So you can select what navigation hierarchy you want, if you want to be able to drill down or if you just want the top level. You can also refine even further that URL structure. You define it in the catalog itself, but you can refine it further if you need to. I always say verify your managed metadata. So when you go in and make sure that you've got this in there. So this is easy if you go into the site settings in the manage your navigation, you'll see that it tells you that you're using managed navigation instead of the structured navigation for the site. So always verify that, even though you turn it on there in the catalog and it's supposed to turn it on for you, go and make sure, right? And it should show you site navigation down here when you look at it. It's not going to tell you the actual terms. It'll just show you that weird thing that says site navigation. But always go ahead and verify that, because I have had times when I turned on the connection to a catalog and it didn't automatically update for whatever reason, and I had to go in and manually put in that managed navigation, and then it would pick it up. Okay. Now, what I showed you was a very, very basic catalog. You can take that way more advanced. You can customize the look and feel using master pages and page layouts with the display templates. Now, you saw mine was very basic. It was not off. It wasn't centered. all that. That can all be fixed with the display templates and page layouts because you can load those up. If you want to know how to make those, go see Kathy Do. She's got it all. And then, of course, you can do refiners for faceted navigation. So if I'd gone into clothing and I wanted to refine it by size, you can go in and turn on that faceted navigation as well. So, and this one is Office 365 in 2013 only. Any questions? Yes?
Exporting and importing. When you export term sets to these terms, can you then import?
There's some things you can do with PowerShell.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did you export these terms?
Yes, so you can create like CSVs. You can export it to a CSV and import it as CSV. A lot of people will do that, taking it from like dev to prod to stage, you know, all those different things. But it's not something you can do right there in the UI. But yes, you can use some PowerShell to do some of that. All right. So the next thing we can do, and this you can do in 2010 as well, is there's some search that you can do with content types and managed metadata. There are pieces of this that you can't do in 2010, but I will call that out because it does require the content by search web part, but you can use the search web parts that are out of the box and modify them. It just takes some XSLT modifications to be able to do that. All right, which I didn't demo for you, but you can do it. All right. So some of the benefits of this, you can build a catalog-like experience. It's not necessarily a catalog. It all takes place either within the same site collection. It can be across site collections. It can be across multiple site collections. So it doesn't have to be limited to one. I can go to like 3 other site collections and do the same thing and set it up everywhere I wanted to. It doesn't require publishing, so you don't have to turn on any kind of publishing. And content approval is optional in this one, right? You don't necessarily have to have content approval. You're just working with the content types and the metadata that's around that to create this experience. And of course, the same thing kind of applies here though. Your search is only going to be available to what the content approval level is set at. So if it's drafts, remember we talked about in the catalog, drafts won't show up. If it's drafts or it's, you know, different settings, like if you go through the stages of approval, then it's going to be whatever you've got your stages set for. You know, you can go in and see who can see draft items versus who can't.
Yeah.
So it's going to be based on those permissions, okay, versus the other one. So to build it, you're going to create your site collection. How are we doing with time? I've got plenty of time. We're good. You're going to go in, you're going to create your site collection, add a content by search web part or more than one, and then build your query based on the content type. So, of course, you have to create your content type. In this case, I'm using the, let's see, what are my next slides? Give me just a second here. Okay, there it is. Perfect. In this particular case, I'm going to do this one on the yoga settings. Remember, we had the 2 different ones. We had products and we have yoga. So I'm going to do this one on yoga. And what it's going to be is I want to be able to just search and find the stuff that I need. And I'm going to find those different categories and things. And so you build your query based on those content types. And I had 2. So I actually have 2 web parts in this one. And I'm going to demo that really quick with a video again. Sorry. I'm glad I have the video, though, because I have no internet. Oh, come on. I don't know why, but when it starts big, it doesn't like it. So here we go. So on my home page, I have 2 search web parts that are just defaulted to the content type. It's just going to show me the content type no matter what. And I can use any term. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a managed metadata term to search through these items to create that catalog-like experience. You remember in the catalog, you have to use those specific refiners. There's no, I just want to use the word shirt or whatever. You have to actually have that in there. And you can't search through any other way. But this we could do with metadata. So I could say I want my focus area to be arms, which has already got metadata for that. Or it could be a word in it that I can do a search and get that information. It can be anything. So there's a lot more flexibility here than in the catalog for being able to find the data. And again, it's not based on publishing. This is all just based on search. I was trying to think of words that I could use. There's not one for stand, obviously. So, and of course, this one, I have the description, but I have no image yet. So I haven't uploaded that into my content. So it's talking to both. And I'm going to show you how I did that. I think I show you in this video. Pretty sure I do. But I could do it by name. I could do it by anything, not just the managed metadata. And that's what I was trying to show you with some of these. Okay, I do show you. So we're going to come in here to the page and edit the page, if I can figure out where I'm at. All right, and you can see I have 2 content search web parts. And I'm just going to show you one because they're basically set the same, just to a different content type. I click to modify it, and I come to the right, and it's going to show me the query that I'm using. And I can select a query. I want to use items matching a content type. I can restrict by app, which means I can do it just within the site, or I can do it across all sites. So if there was a bunch of other sites that were using those content types, I can pull it in from them as well. And then I can restrict by content type, which is what we did. And then it's going to show you your results. And same thing on the other one. I just did the same thing, only I did yoga details instead of just the pose itself. You can change the way it looks. So I did picture on left, 3 lines on the right. So if I'd had a description or other data in there, I could do that as well. That's why I wanted this one to be pictures. The other one, I did the single line with the item type, right? So you can change those display templates. Then you can come in here to search, and I just did, hey, send this to the web parts on this page. I can send it to both. I could have sent it to just one and left the other one be the whole full thing. You know, you can have multiple ways of doing that. I can't remember what I'm going to show you. Oh, dog. So I show you one-legged downward dog and then downward-facing dog. And so it just allows you to search for the items that you want, right? But it's still that catalog-like experience. The thing that it's lacking is like what you would have in a regular catalog, where you can select those products and then maybe build a cart and all of that. That's some of the things that you can do in more advanced for the creating the product catalog. All right? But it does give you the ability to then drill down. Like if you were building classes for yoga, hey, we want to do arms and have it pull out the details and all of that. I can print it all off. I can create my class and then go teach it. Okay. Come back to this. This is how we did it, building the search catalog, adding the search web part, configuring it to send it to the other places. If you want to get really advanced here, you can do custom display templates. So that list where I just said, hey, show me the 3 items in the picture, or 3 lines in a picture on the left, you can make the custom display templates here as well. So, and again, Kathy Do and some of the others will be showing you how to do those custom display templates so that you can build yourself a full rich catalog type experience rather than just the basic images like what I had. Those are using all the out-of-the-box features. So it's still pretty rich even with the out-of-the-box stuff. There's a couple of resources. I don't know why I had a blank slide in there. A couple of resources that I thought you might like. Building a catalog. Somebody actually did a blog, and they did the full, like with branding and design and refined hierarchy and all of that in theirs. And it's on TechNet, so you can actually go out to TechNet and walk through that and build that catalog. Now they use the template. So they used the out-of-the-box 2013 template for that catalog. I did not. I built it all from scratch. So you want to, if you're going to build it from scratch in like Office 365 or something, you want to use my slides for that and then go back and pull in their display templates, things like that. Great article for managed metadata here. And then I've got you some content types ones. I think y'all get the slides. So if you get the slides, you can click on those links and go to that information. And Q&A, and we're going to be right on time. Well, thank you for coming. Enjoyed it. Hope y'all have a great rest of the conference.